Okay, Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Yeah, it exists. We actually have this now. Here's the thing about Star Wars. Do you like Star Wars? I love Star Wars. If you saw an episode of my show where I discussed my favorite movie, here's a spoiler, my number one movie was Star Wars. And when I just said Star Wars, I meant all of it. Yes, I like the prequel trilogy. Yes, I like the sequel trilogy. If I had a need for DVDs, I'd probably have all 9 of those movies and Rogue One and not Solo on DVD on my shelf. As it is, I think I just have the original 3, and I think that's that's pretty much the one that shines, and the one that just had pretty much changed movie making overall. So, it just makes sense that Disney would have a successful Star Wars series, and some of them not as successful as others. The Mandalorian and Andor were received very well, and I have to admit, they were received very well because they move away from the typical Star Wars formula. They simply just are taking characters and they play in the universe. Whereas it seems like fan servicey projects like Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan don't do so well. I think there's just something where this is kind of a challenge of Star Wars, is to move away from this idea that we're going to tell the story of the Skywalker family. It's been done, and it's been done to death. The sequel trilogy really buried that into the ground, and now that I hear that they're going to do another trilogy, who knows what subject they're going to discuss in this particular thing. Here's the thing about Star Wars. It is such a very rich and beautiful world that Lucas created. It would be like, say, if, if you were the first person to make a Western, and then suddenly, everybody wanted to make a Western as well, which probably happened. But can you imagine it's just, the Western is sort of like a setting, and there's conventions that show up. Same with high fantasy. There's usually this idea of dwarves, elves, and stuff like that. It just feels right to just keep making stories in these things, even though they fall into the same conventions. Now, of course, it's going to be that much being said. Is Skeleton Crew good? Yes, I think it is good. It is trying something different, but at the same time, it is still trying to be very familiar. I feel like everyone makes this comparison of Star Wars meets the Goonies, and I probably think that's the best analogy you could have, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was initially even pitched this way. This feels like a show that is definitely designed for younger viewers. That is not bad. I don't think that is bad at all. I think there should be Star Wars shows that are designed for younger viewers. I think there's this cartoon called I'm hesitant to call it cartoon, but it's CG. It's an animated show, okay? The Young Jedi Chronicles or something like that. I forget what it's called, but I tried watching a few episodes of it, then I realized, okay, this obviously is designed for younger kids, and I'm not really in this, and plus, I don't know how it fits in the canon. Plus, since I've seen the prequel trilogy, I know all the young Jedis get slaughtered, so watching this is not really very helpful, is it? So Skeleton Crew seems to take place on some sort of planet that has suburbs. They have houses, and they pretty much live like people do in the suburbs of the United States. And I get the feeling like that's what they were going for. They were going for this very familiar look to it. Now, here's the issue that I have with this thing. From the beginning, it feels like you're essentially in a suburban paradise, and I get the feeling that might not be the case. Now, depending on when this posts, they might have revealed some things, but, and I'm going to reveal a few spoilers here. There are scenes where these kids, and there's a whole group of kids that get together, and they find this secret cave or something in this near the sewers and something like that, and turns out this cave is actually the entrance to a starship, and the starship takes off, taking them with them. That's a great start. I actually kind of like that. You could have easily had this show taken place not in the Star Wars universe and have it take place on Earth, and I would have been hooked on the first episode, which would have ended with them taking off. And I thought, okay, good spot. In the second episode, that ship's autopilot takes them to a space station where they discover that their planet is essentially isolated from the rest of the Star Wars universe. In fact, it looks like that no one seems to know what their planet is. I think it's called something like Aden, which is a weird name. I really think that is a very weird name for a planet. I don't know. I think, in fact, I thought that like we need to go to Aden, and I actually think like a robot repeats back Aden, and I thought he was like making a joke, like he thought the at was part of their planet's name, and then I discovered, okay, that is part of their planet's name. It's actually called Aden. Maybe I'm misinterpreting this. You can leave a comment if I did. But, yeah, I didn't really know what to think of that. So, this is... Oh, yeah. I should probably mention that the beginning of this series is very much an homage to Star Wars A New Hope. There is a scene where a ship gets taken over by pirates, and reminds me of pretty much... then there's a scene where the head pirate walks onto the scene, and it looks just like the entrance of Darth Vader from Star Wars A New Hope. And I get the feeling like, yeah, maybe you don't need to do that, and maybe it's just sort of unavoidable given the situation that you're at, but the way the shots are set up, you didn't have to set them up so they feel so homage-y to that. And, so yeah, Jude Law's on the show, and if you remember Jude Law, there was a time like 20 years ago, I swear Jude Law was in like everything. Like, he was like in so many movies that I swear I was going like, this guy must be so busy. And yeah, and he shows up, and apparently he's a Jedi, so he's Jude Law Jedi. And so obviously they're going to bring in Jedis to this. They don't have to. You could easily do a Star Wars story without the Jedis, but I have to admit, the Jedis are the thing that kind of make the Star Wars universe kind of flow and gives it the force, if you will. So yeah, they've got this idea set up. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, I don't know, treasure or something like that. And there's a few things that I think are happening on this show that I really enjoy. The first thing is they have a character here that's kind of like a blue elephant creature, and I'm told that the way they do that effect is mostly practical, and they do a CG kind of over it, but I actually thought that was a CG character the whole time. And it feels like a very real and drawn-out character. This character, I think his name is Neil, and he's rather cool. And they seem to have this other character who's kind of the main character seems to be this guy, I forget his name, but he's kind of from I guess he's from a single-parent household, because I've never seen his mom on him, and his dad's always at work all the time, which feels very much like reminiscent of our time. And I get the feeling like he was told he has to take this test that would allow him that would basically choose his career path. Now, I have a problem with this. If this planet Aden is such a paradise, it might not be the paradise that you think it is. Instead of being a utopia, it could easily be a dystopia. Especially if, like, kids at a very young age have to take a certain test to decide what career they're in. That's maybe not a good idea, because then they're going to be fated to be in that career. I think you're seeing what I'm saying here, and maybe further episodes that they've shown now, because time of this recording, there's a third episode out now that I haven't seen yet. So maybe this planet of Aden is hidden for a reason, or maybe that it is hidden for bad reasons. So that's kind of that could be an interesting twist that they go with. And the way they do shows now these days is they usually try and like put a lot of twists in the thing, and usually viewers can see them coming. And then they try and end the show revealing that twist, so you'll watch the next episode. This is a very it's a good and bad way to do a television show now, because it's dependent on you having that twist there. Skeleton Crew is definitely, I mean, none of the dialogue feels like, it feels like kids talk like kids in this thing. And maybe that works against it, and maybe that works for it, because it feels a little bit more real, because we've all been kids, and to be a kid in this thing, I mean, these kids actually play lightsabers, and they actually have action figures of Jedis. In other words, they have the same Star Wars fascination that we have. I don't know, that's kind of weird. I mean, what can you say about that? Anyway, if you haven't watched Skeleton Crew, I would recommend just trying out the first 2 episodes. because we were only prepared to watch one episode that night, but we actually watched the two, and I was surprised.